For example, the first order consequences of exercise, pain and time spent, are commonly considered undesirable, while the second order consequences, better health and more attractive appearance, are desirable. Similarly, food that tastes good is often bad for you, and vice versa. We are reading Principles by Ray Dalio. And so far, we've been having a really good time reading this. We are up to 1.8 weigh second and third order consequences. Very often we do things and then we only think about the first thing that will happen based on what we've done. And we don't think about what are the knock-on effects, how could it continue on? So here we go. Let's continue. Weigh second and third order consequences. By recognizing the higher level consequences nature optimizes for, I've come to see that people who overweigh the first order consequences of the decisions and ignore the effects of second and subsequent order consequences rarely reach their goals. This is because the first order consequences often have opposite desirabilities from second order consequences. And the page stuck together a little bit. Here we go. Resulting in big mistakes in decision making. For example, the first order consequences of exercise, pain and time spent, are commonly considered undesirable, while the second order consequences, better health and more attractive appearance, are desirable. Similarly, food that tastes good is often bad for you, and vice versa. Quite often, the first order consequences are the temptations that cost us what we really want, and sometimes they are the barriers that stand in our way. It's almost as though nature sorts us by throwing us trick choices that have both types of consequences and penalizing those who make the decision on the basis of the first order consequences alone. By contrast, people who choose what they really want and avoid the temptations and get over the pains that drive them away from what they really want are much more likely to have successful lives. This also applies to investing. There is the boring way and the more exciting way, and the more exciting way is often going to get you into trouble, whereas the boring way is definitely more safe, but it will not get you, in that case, as higher returns. So in this case, it's a double order consequence kind of thing that's going on. But I think the other thing is that it is very important to realize that as humans, we have choice. And that is an advantage that we have, but it's also our disadvantage. It's something that causes us a bit of issues because we have the choice. Most animals, they only know and only have access to the food that they've always had, which means that it may not taste that great. So, for example, monkeys eat bananas with seeds in them because we have cultivated bananas to not have seeds. Whereas in nature, in the wild, bananas have, it's full of seeds, and the seeds are really bitter and not really great tasting. But that's what monkeys eat, and that's all they have access to. Whereas we have the ability to cultivate our own food and change it and manipulate it and add more sugar and do all of these different things. So we've been able to create things that we really like, but that aren't necessarily very good for us. So it's important to be able to realize that. And it comes back to what he keeps talking about, Ray Dalio, going back to nature and having a look at how nature functions. Nature functions perfectly. Nature doesn't have any of these things that make it challenging. Leonardo da Vinci used to say, life isn't difficult. It's people that make it difficult for themselves. Okay, 1.9, own your outcomes. For the most part, life gives you so many decisions to make and so many opportunities to recover from your mistakes that if you handle them well, you can have a terrific life. Of course, sometimes there are major influences on the quality of our lives that come from things beyond our control. The circumstances we are born into, accidents and illnesses and so forth. But for the most part, even the worst circumstances can be made better with the right approach. For example, a friend of mine drove into a swimming pool, hit his head and became a quadriplegic. But he approached the situation well and became as happy as anybody else because there are many paths to happiness. My point is simply this. Whatever circumstances life brings you, you will be more likely to succeed and find happiness if you take responsibility for making your decisions well, instead of complaining about things being beyond your control. Psychologists call this having an internal locus of control, and studies consistently show that people who have it outperform those who don't. I often say it's all a mind game. The more you can understand the mind, the more you can observe yourself and see what is going on, the more that you can control what is happening. So, for example, when I'm in the car and something frustrates me, I observe it. I think about it. I look at it from a different perspective. It was an exercise I used to get some of my clients to do, where I would get them to have this conversation with somebody that wasn't a really positive conversation. I get them to jump and observe the conversation from the side, and then observe the conversation from the other person's point of view and see what it was, if they could figure out what it was that was upsetting the other person. And they might have noticed some body language or something else that they were doing, or the tone of voice that was upsetting the other person. And then I got them to re-observe on the other side again, and then come back into their own body and change the conversation. And when you can do an exercise like that, you no longer look at things only from your own perspective. You no longer have the inflexibility. Very often, we need to take responsibility, but we also need to be flexible. We need to be a little bit more understanding and look at things from another person's perspective. Because very often, the thing that annoys us about the other person, we might be doing something similar, but not realize it because we only see ourselves from our own perspective. So we can't see that we are annoying somebody else in the same way that they might annoy us, for example. So don't worry about whether you like your situation or not. Life doesn't give a damn about what you like. It's up to you to connect what you want with what you need to get it, and then find the courage to carry it through. In the next chapter, I will show you the 5-step process that helped me learn about reality and evolve. And the other really important thing is that I think I spoke about it a couple of days ago in another chapter, and I was talking about sitting in a playground and seeing a bird. And one bird was fine, and it was just walking around, pecking at the ground, looking for food. And the other bird had an injured leg, and it was limping. And it didn't go and complain to anybody else. It didn't ask for a handout. It didn't ask the other bird to bring it food. It was just limping around, picking at food. And so animals don't really concern themselves with what hasn't gone right in their lives. They don't compare and say, you still have a whole leg and I don't, and that's not fair, and we should do something about it. They just get on with it. They realize that, this happened to me. It could happen to anybody. In this case, it happened to me. So I need to find solutions in order to be able to continue living. I still need to eat. I still need to do all of these different things. And they just get on with it. And this is something that I think that we can definitely learn from animals for sure. 1.10, a look at the machine from a higher level. Our uniquely human ability to look down from a higher level doesn't apply just to understanding reality and the cause-effect relationships underlying it. It also applies to looking down on yourself and those around you. I call this ability to rise above your own and other circumstances and objectively look down on them higher-level thinking. Higher-level thinking gives you the ability to study and influence the cause-effect relationships at play in your life and use them to get the outcomes you want. Think of yourself as a machine operating with a machine and know that you have the ability to alter your machines to produce better outcomes. You have your goals. I call the way you will operate to achieve your goals your machine. It consists of a design, things that have to get done, and the people who will do the things that need getting done. Those people include you and those who help you. For example, imagine that your goal is a military one, to take a hill from an enemy. Your design for your machine might include 2 scouts, 2 snipers, 4 infantrymen, and so on. While the right design is essential, it is only half the battle. It is equally important to put the right people in each of those positions. They need different qualities to do their jobs well. The scouts must be fast runners. The snipers must be good marksmen, so that the machine will produce the outcomes you seek. I used to have a coach many years ago when I had my cafe, and he used to always say aces in their places. And he would have a look at what everybody's particular skills were. So he'd get everybody to do everything. And then he'd see who performed the best at each task. And the person who performed best at that task would end up getting that task. And that worked extremely well, because that meant that the person who was going to get the customer the greatest satisfaction, who was going to get all of these really amazing results, was the person doing that job. And in our team, we had different people who were naturally good at different things. If you hire people who are all good at the same thing, then that's not going to work very well. So it's definitely important to make sure that you get the right people in the right position, and then you And then there's a whole level beyond that, because you don't just want the best person doing the best job. You want to make sure that they stay motivated, because somebody who's good at making coffee might not be enjoying it to do it the whole day. So then you have to start looking around that and seeing how you can keep them motivated. And then it just continues on. There's more and more and more that needs to go along with it. But to start off with, you need the right people in the right positions in the right team. B, by comparing your outcomes with your goals, you can determine how to modify your machine. This evaluation and improvement process exactly mirrors the evolutionary process I described earlier. It means looking at how to improve or change the design or people to achieve your goals. Schematically, the process is a feedback loop as shown in the diagram on the opposite page, and it actually looks like a little person. If I can. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this onto Zoom, but it definitely shows on Bigo. So it looks like a little person. Oh, there we go. Goals on one arm, machines in the middle, outcomes on the other side. And then at the bottom, I have to see if I can. Oh, zero, yeah. I didn't think that it's a part of my face. And then at the bottom, you have a triangle. The two legs are design. Oh, it does want to design and people. Okay, that was quite challenging. That was a lot of fun. Okay. C, distinguish between you as the designer of your machine and you as a worker within your machine. One of the hardest things for people to do is to objectively look down on themselves within their circumstances, for example, their machine, so that they can act as the machine's designer and manager. Most people remain stuck in the perspective of being a worker within the machine. If you can recognize the differences between these roles, and that it is much more important that you are a good designer or manager of your life and a good worker in it, you will be on the right path. To be successful designer, manager, you has to be objective about what the worker you is really like, not believing in him more than he deserves or putting him in jobs he shouldn't be in. Instead of having this strategic perspective, most people operate emotionally, and in the moment, their lives are a series of undirected emotional experiences, going from one thing to the next. If you want to look back on your life and feel you've achieved what you wanted to, you can't operate that way. Yes, and this is very true for, I think, not only business owners, but investors as well. There's only so many hours in a day. And one, you need to be able to manage yourself really well, as if you are a manager and a worker while you are still doing the tasks. And then you need to get to a point where you are successful enough that you can then start hiring other people. And then you need to be able to let go of, and this is what Michael Gerber always talks about in The E-Myth, which is another great book. And he talks about the fact that you need to let go of your operational knowledge and skills and learn to become a manager and then manage somebody else to do that task. Because there are only a certain number of hours in a day. And if you want to keep growing that business, you're not going to be able to keep doing it. Yesterday, I was in a webinar and I was actually talking to somebody who put together a lead magnet and attracted lots of clients with really great marketing. But once those clients came in, there were too many of them, and she wasn't able to deal with them by herself. Now, if she'd already prepared with staff that could assist her and different tasks that needed to be done by somebody else, she would have been fine. But because of this, she had to shut the whole operation down and keep the clients that she wanted and say no to a lot of clients who would have been good clients. So it is important, really, really important, to make sure that you, and this whole chapter is talking about it right now, have the plans in place, and then you have the right people in place, and that you're able to manage the situation and be realistic about what it is that might happen, so that you can anticipate and set together the machine in a way that it will work under the circumstances that you're expecting. And even though life might throw you a different circumstance, there is a way around. And if you become a quadriplegic, for example, you can still find happiness because there are multiple paths to happiness. And I think that's probably a really good place to then wind down. So we'll continue with part D of 1.10, a look at the machine from the higher level, when we continue tomorrow at 8 o'clock Sydney time. I'm really enjoying this part of principles. And I think I have a dry throat in the morning. I think I need to drink some water while I am reading. And this is another great lesson on what Principles talks about. As you are creating your machine, you want to evaluate and find out what is working and what isn't. And since I've noticed that I've been coughing a little bit more, I might need to just have some water next to me, which I don't have today. But that is completely fine. If you enjoyed this reading, if you would like to read or listen to me read the rest of the chapters for you, then you can find those on YouTube at the Passive Cash Flow Club. We also read Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Art of Thinking Clearly, and we put out a request for an idea for another book yesterday, and we've already had a couple of suggestions. One of those being Fake by Robert Kiyosaki as well. I'm a very big fan of Robert Kiyosaki, so that could be the one, unless somebody votes for another book, and there are more votes for that one than there is for Fake. So would love to see you on YouTube and get your thoughts and comments on the videos. I would love to get to know you a bit more. I'm really, really grateful that you are all here. And yes, make sure that you subscribe when you are on YouTube, because it will give you the opportunity to be able to see when we also launch videos with the answers to your questions, to your finance, wealth, and passive income questions. So if you have any questions, if there's something you're not certain of while I'm reading, if there's anything that you're not certain of from a finance or an economics or a wealth creation perspective, I would love to create videos to answer those questions for you and help you out. And you can let me know what those questions are by going to Instagram. And you can find me there at business_team_6_official. And I would love to connect and actually get to know some of you and yes, have a conversation with you. Because at the moment I can see that you are there, especially if you are on Bigo. And I would love to be able to get to know you a little bit better and get to know what it is that makes you tick and what you're excited about, and what it is that you love about me reading Ray Dalio Principles at the moment, or the other books that we've read. And finally, if you would like to become a better investor, one of the best ways to do that is through games. So some people play Monopoly, some people play Cash Flow because it's Monopoly on steroids. And we've also created an online version, which is a life simulator, which takes cash flow to a whole new level. So we would love to be able to come and see you for that. And if you'd like more information about that, feel free to send me your details, and I will make sure that my VA, my virtual assistant, will send you the information on how you can come and join us. We will be playing again very soon. So if you'd like to join, make sure that you email me in Instagram, and I will get that information sent out to you. Okay, it is time for me to start heading off. There are things to do. I'm sure that you also have goals that you're working on, and it's always good to be able to start off with some motivation and then go out and get the work done. And so have an amazing day today. Thank you so much for joining. I always really appreciate you being here. I'm going to stop the Zoom recording, but I'm going to quickly go through and have a look at who joined on Bigo and say hello to everybody there. Have an absolutely amazing day. I look forward to meeting many of you, and I will see you all very, very soon. And thanks for joining. And remember to make the switch to unlock your rich, because if you do things the same way you've always done them, then you are going to get the same results. But if you make that switch, then you can unlock your rich. And we are talking wealth, we are talking health, we are talking relationships, we are talking wealth on every level. Everything is very, very interconnected, which is what Ray Dalio also talks about. So remember to make the switch to unlock your rich. I'll see you tomorrow at 8 a.m. Thank you so much for joining.